Speaks.
Thank you for being here. Very
Honored to be here.
inspired by your book. Thank you.
Thank you.
First question. Is the Donald Trump presidency and the current political climate here in the United States, is this the last stand of white supremacy?
Ooh, I wish I knew.
We'll start light.
I think that what we are seeing in this country right now is absolutely a product of colonization, right? Colonization has bred this mentality of separation, of scarcity, the false idea of white supremacy that folks are holding on to. None of us are exempt from this pain, including white people. And I think white people who, especially some white people who are have lower, lower, you can tell that the altitude is kicking in, that have less wealth in their lives, are turning to their white supremacy as something they think is the thing that they have that's going to get them through, when we all know that in reality that's the very thing that's harming all of us. So I hope and pray that it is. I think that at this moment has forced us all to get more real in our conversations. I think even in philanthropy, the reason that we're able to have conversations like this around the country about race and white supremacy is folks are utterly astonished and shocked at the grotesque demonstrations of hate that we see around communities. But I also think that we have not done the work as a community, as a country, as we were saying before, to examine our history and learn from it. So I don't know. We've got work to do.
Absolutely. You lay this out pretty extensively in your book, but just looking at the range of crises that we're in, right? What is the role of philanthropy? Like, what needs to happen now as we face ecological crises, the rise of authoritarianism, increasing inequality, a new nuclear arms race, the list goes on. If you had 3 recommendations for everybody in this room to take back to their foundations, their offices, their boardrooms, what needs to happen?
I think I can use this. Can you guys hear me for this? Okay. Oh man, let's see. I think that we need to move as much money as possible, as soon as possible. I talked this morning for folks who were in the room. We mentioned this new report about the climate and how 15 years from now we may not even be here. And so why are we holding on to resources that we could, put into the movement to so many causes to make change? And so one is, I think, an extreme interrogation of why we're holding on to resources. And think about spending down, spending out, and moving money in ways that we have never before. If the world doesn't end in 15 years, fingers crossed and prayers going up, there will be new wealth and new philanthropy. And so the idea that any foundation needs to just hoard and hold on to its money is a little bit silly, I think. So that's part of it. I think, too, we have to just own up to how we're harming communities. Because the truth is, although we are funding some good things, the majority of our assets are tied up in harmful and extractive industries. So when I talk about the world ending in 15 years, part of that is on us as philanthropy, because we have investments in fossil fuels and oil companies and all types of harmful things. So I think we have to put that on blast in a way that we never have before. As a program person who has worked in philanthropy for 15 years, I didn't even know what was going on the investment side of the house. Like, they didn't even tell us. Like, most of the time I didn't even know how much money we had, much less how they were investing those funds. When you think about the $800 billion, you guys know this, $800 billion that foundations are sitting on, Only 5 to 7% is leaving and going into the community, right? So about 95% is invested in Wall Street, the majority in harmful and extractive industries. So we have to find a way to blow the top off of that and expose that. Because we're actually probably causing more harm to communities with our resources than we are helping. And so that is, for me, what I'm most passionate about right now is helping foundations understand that those assets were created in part on the backs of my ancestors and off of stolen land, and on a lot of your ancestors, and that money belongs to us, and we can at least stop more harm from happening. Do no harm at minimum, right? So that's really where it is for me. I'm mortified when I hear stories of foundations investing in Standing Rock, but at the same time, they will not divest from the same oil company, right? So what's the net value of what we're trying to do here? Are we really trying to use these resources to help community? If so, we've got to do something drastically different with the 95.
So a question I had for later on, but we've arrived. Should foundations have a goal to give away all of their wealth? What percentage should a foundation hold on to while staying true, representing authentically, giving authentically? You know, in this economy as it is structured, what would be a safe amount to give away, and how much of it needs to move, say, over the next 5-10 years?
All of it.
Yeah.
You know, the minimum payout rules, so you guys know the 5%, right? Minimum payout, 1976, Congress enacted that because foundations were not paying out anything. It went up to 6% and then it came back to 5%, right? In general, about 7% is the money that goes out. An easy thing would be for that legislation to change to require foundations to pay out more, right? What are we so afraid of? Are we in the business of hoarding wealth, growing our legacies, or are we actually about investing money in communities? I worked at a foundation in Seattle that is probably one of the most progressive foundations in the country. Fund 100% of our grant making in communities of color, long-term support, 10 years of funding and more, base building, movement building, issue agnostic. I mean, as good as it gets for our grant making strategy. At the same time, even in that kind of institution, every time our corpus grew like another, I don't know, million or whatever, we had a big ice cream party. We celebrated the fact that we had more money. We never celebrated the fact that, oh my God, last year was our biggest grant making year ever, right? So we are completely wired in this industry to think about accumulating or hoarding wealth, and I think that needs to be examined. What is the legitimacy of this field? What is the legitimacy of going into perpetuity? I have to question that. I don't have a percentage. I don't know. I know it's not enough. I think that if we were successful, so all of you are working, from what I understand, in your institutions who may not be as far along as you are in your journey, right? Something like you're trying to push for change in your organizations. But think about this for just one quick second. If we were all successful, if the mission of COFIE was, 100% successful and we could close the doors because every grant dollar leaving foundations was now going to support equity, right? Would we actually have moved the needle on anything great? I don't know, because we still have that 95% issue. And so I think that it's definitely, I don't know what the number is, but it is drastically a lot higher than what we're currently putting out the door.
So there's a fear that everybody loses their jobs in here, right? Mm-hmm. If all the money gets given away. And, there's a fear of what happens if we start opening the prison doors. And so we end up with these economies, these problems in which it seems impossible to move beyond the criminal system as it is, the prison industrial complex, because it's a massive economy. People's jobs, entire livelihoods are based on this institution continuing. The livelihood of a lot of people in this room is based on philanthropy continuing to do what it does, how it does it. There's fear in giving money away to the people who need it most, that people of color can't be trusted with this money. Like, that's an idea that permeates the philanthropic world, that young people can't be trusted, that poor people can't be trusted to manage this money if they get it or if they get too much of it. So the fear is pervasive. Thinking about indigenous wisdom, what is your response or prescription for dealing with that fear that lives within all of us when we think about the radical change that needs to happen?
Yeah, you ask tough questions, but good ones, really good. You know, I think the fear is an offspring of colonization. It's intentional that we're afraid of those things, right? When we subscribe to the ideology that can only benefit and be successful if others suffer, then that fear is going to be pervasive. In the indigenous worldview, if you suffer, I suffer. If you thrive, I thrive. We are completely interdependent. There's a comfort in that because I know I'm going to be all right. I know if my foundation is shut down and I don't have a job tomorrow, I will be all right. There's a community there that's going to support me, feed me, take me in, do whatever. And so that's the type of, like, when you think about philanthropy at its basic level of loving people, taking care of one another, showing up in community in a way that we're all connected, if we could subscribe to that versus the other, then I think we'll be a lot more fearless. But you know, this is a big question because when I was writing this book, I interviewed some of the most amazing movement leaders in this country who are imagining, you know, dismantling all kinds of systems and radically reimagining the world. But when I asked them about philanthropy, I got very limited imagination. One, I think I say that the spoils of colonization has stolen our imagination, our ability to imagine something different. But even those, the most radical groups have gotten into a situation that they are dependent on these resources in some way. And if you don't have the privilege, to think about the security outside the system, right? If you're on a life raft in the middle of the perfect storm, and that's all you've got, but it's not the best vessel, to imagine poking a hole in that is terrifying, because that is all you have. It was surprising to me, other folks, wealthy white folks, had amazing imaginations around what could be different in philanthropy. And what that said to me is that, you know, those of us who have been oppressed and colonized or whatnot, our imaginations have been stifled, and we have to find a way to break through that to a place of freedom, to know that we're going to be okay. And I also think to see the change in philanthropy that we need to see, all of us have to be willing to risk our reputations and risk our jobs. I've been fired twice. And, you know, I didn't like it. It was terrifying in the moment. But to really stand up for what is right, to really push this field, we've got to all be willing to take that risk. There's no way that we're going to change if we cower to the powers that be of these institutions. That's exactly what they want. They want to pay us for our silence. We have to speak out and then build power, just like in organizing outside of philanthropy. There's power in numbers, right? And I think we're at a point now where the window is open to do that. There's a conversation, there's a day of reckoning that's happening around philanthropy that we can all unite and keep pushing this forward. And do that in a way that you're most comfortable. I understand that it's hard if you need your check, you got kids, whatever's going on, to like run into your boardroom, like power to the people, whatever, right? But there are ways that we can all push a little bit harder, and we can bring people in and meet them where they are. It may be a slow burn, but I feel like there's an opportunity for us to do more. We got to.
So in addition to getting fired, which can be fun, depending on the context, if you got the privilege. What are your recommendations for igniting imagination in philanthropy, whether it's in the office, at events, the way that we give, what we ask of grantees when they get money? Where does your imagination go in terms of what's possible on like even a day-to-day basis?
Yeah,
dance parties at 7 a.m. Kick
yes,
the day off, right?
Yes, especially to Beyonce music. Yes. I just hope, I've heard from so many people that this conversation has inspired, and And this is not a new conversation. There have been many, many people in philanthropy pushing for years. But I think that we possibly have reached a tipping point with more folks with an analysis in this field than we have in the past. More organizers are working in philanthropy. And so my hope is that we can just continue to push, get to a place where we can we've got to shift the culture, the internal culture of foundations. The external part, we're not doing a great job of.
Are you a call on one, Terry?
Terry, are you here? Externally, we're not doing a great job, right? Like look at the data of where our funding's going, a lot of work we can do. But that's still the easy part, right? We're not giving up our power if we change our grant making strategy all that much. The hard work is the internal culture of these foundations. That's where the rubber meets the road. Who is really calling the shots in these institutions? How can we reimagine something that's different there? Right, so I'm glad to see some progress being made around grant making. Can we have campaigns that are about radically changing what the boards of foundations look like? Can we have campaigns that are led by us around increasing the minimum payout rule? Those are the things that I feel like are possible in my lifetime to get us a little bit closer to equity.
How do we make the field more fun?
I'm trying, right? Happy hour in a few hours. I
mean, is that an important thing?
It's important.
I mean, I read your book, and I listen to a lot of colleagues, nobody in this room, of course, who said that this work is very disheartening, right?
Yeah.
And very difficult and draining, and a lot of people who need to be doing this work because they have the imagination, they have the heart, the spirit to transform it. They're just exhausted at the end of a year, especially folks of color.
Right.
And a lot of women who are in these positions that they have the knowledge, the information, the skills, but are only allowed to go so far with it,
Right.
So,
yes.
I don't want to reduce the bigness of the conversation to fun, but I mean, people got to have fun to want to stay in this, right? So yeah, what are your suggestions for making this more fun and enjoyable?
I think that our joy is our strength, and our joy is a choice. Sometimes, even in very difficult situations, we can choose joy. And having fun is, so my way, and I think one of the reasons this book is resonating with folks is I tried to make it fun. I tried to make a very heavy conversation realistic. Through storytelling, through sharing my own stupidity, and when I've stepped into crazy situations and done the wrong thing. We all make mistakes, we're all on a journey. And when I look back at things that I've done, I think it's funny. So part of that is a Native way. We laugh a lot. If you ever see a group of Natives, they're the happiest group of people you've ever seen, telling jokes, cutting up. And so, so I think that that's a way that invites others in. If we come to this work, I don't feel like we need any more reports and publications about this stuff. We know what to do. And so we tend to fetishize, I think, publications, reports, and data to an extent. But I think we can find ways. We just need to sit in a room and talk with each other and get to know. If you sit down with folks and really hear their experience and their journey, find ways to connect, we all have so much more in common than we know. And so, yeah, let's make it fun. I think bringing art into our spaces is important. Most foundations, it's funny when I was interviewing people for this book, I didn't really realize this about the places I work, but I think it's true in a lot of places. Foundations are very quiet offices, like libraries. No one talks very, really whispering. And so I try to talk as loud as I can when I go into foundations. And why not? Why is it not okay to have a good old belly laugh at work, right? And so I think we do take ourselves so too seriously, and we just gotta find ways to get through that.
Edgar, you like art?
Yeah, I like art.
You wanna do a poem? You wanna get loud in here? Let's do a poem. I got one.
Oh, you got one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just call and response.
Okay. I was like,
Let's do it. Let's do it. Everybody repeat after me. Y'all ready?
Okay.
All right. We declare.
We declare.
We declare.
We declare.
We declare that we are human beings.
We declare that we are human beings.
We declare that we have always been human beings.
We declare that we have always been human beings.
We declare our right to human rights.
We declare our right to human rights.
Universal rights.
Universal rights.
We declare the rights of kings.
We declare the rights of kings.
Queens.
Queens.
Emperors.
Emperors.
Presidents.
Presidents.
Priests.
Priests.
Priestesses.
Priestesses.
Warriors.
Warriors.
Philosophers.
Philosophers.
Teachers and students.
Teachers and students.
Elders and newborns.
Elders and newborns.
We declare.
We declare.
We declare.
We declare.
We declare our place here.
We declare our place here.
Above all, as spiritual entities.
Above all, as spiritual entities.
With the right to exist.
With the right to exist.
Without question.
Without question.
We declare all declarations.
We declare all declarations.
And all rights to make all declarations.
And our rights to make all declarations.
As we see fit.
As we see fit.
Now and always.
Now and always.
For the betterment and fulfillment.
For the betterment and fulfillment.
Of all promises of humanity.
Of all promises to humanity.
Past, present, and future.
Past, present, and future.
We declare.
We declare.
Thank you.
Love it.
I just wanted to soften you up for another hard question. So thinking about racial justice, what are the three most impactful areas of giving right now? Like where, if you had $1 billion to put towards the issue of racial injustice, increasing racial injustice, where would that money go right now?
Wow. You know, I'm getting increasingly political about how I think about giving, and I understand there are parameters and laws around that with foundations, but there's so much that we. And what we're seeing happening in this country right now with women of color moving into political office is super inspiring. And so I would probably figure out a way to put all $1 billion of that money into a way to get, overturn all these offices and fill them with women of color.
All right, and my final question before we turn it over to the audience, why do you stay? And what is your message to anybody here who just feels like, this is it, I'm gonna go see what this guy has to say, but I know I'm about to walk next week, I'm done with this field. Why do you stay? What is your hope for the field?
You know, well, first, what I've learned is that you can leave, but the same shit is over there that's here. Like, work is work is work. It's a job. Dynamics of white supremacy are everywhere, so the grass is not necessarily greener. There absolutely seems to be unique, special characteristics within philanthropy because of the concentrated privilege and wealth. You know, I stay though because I feel called. I've tried to leave, fired twice. I tried to take a leave of absence from the current job, and I just find my way back. Partly because I think I've surrendered to money being my medicine as an elder bestowed upon me. And second, I have, my faith in humanity has been restored through this book. And let me tell you, I'm up here today on the stage, I wrote a book, it all seems glorious. Sometimes we bring out a red carpet and step and repeat, we jazz it up and make it fun, right? But let me tell you, it hasn't always been that way. And the fact that I have seen a full circle moment of the field that has persecuted me, pushed me out, tried to silence me, now celebrating and financing this project and inviting me in and has put me on a pedestal as an expert. It's pretty remarkable. And that is not anything that I did. This is from the seeds of so much work that has happened that has led us to such a time as this. So what I say to people who feel today might be your last day, one is maybe it needs to be your last day. Like, take care of yourself and listen to your body when it's time to go. I stayed way too long in my first job and almost lost every strand of hair that I have, and I like my hair, okay? And so I probably should have left 2 years earlier. So there is a time to do the work and get out. Do not let your identity, your soul, your mind, or whatever be consumed by these institutions. We are all replaceable. And there's something about philanthropy that wants to suck your soul out, right? Like, if you work for this organization, they want to brand you like you belong to them. We are all people, we are full people who have a full palette of ways to contribute to the world, and our jobs are one of those ways. And if you feel like you have hit the brick wall and you're not able to do that in that job, there might be another job where you can be more fruitful. So know when to stay, know when to go, but wherever you are, just know that this struggle for racial justice is going to follow us everywhere we go. And I do think there's a special moment right now. If we keep pushing together, we might actually get to a better place.
You have good ideas. I'm taking notes.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.